At the end of December, I was so optimistic, maybe naive. I decided to host a read-along. I decided to join a read-along. I decided to join a readathon. I decided to join another read-along. And I decided to do a buddy read. Some of these were mistakes. Welcome to Mad on Books, where I talk about fantasy mostly, science fiction sometimes, and comics occasionally. So the really exciting thing that happened in February is I hit 1,000 subscribers, which kind of surprised me. I mean, it seems like it's probably inevitable if you keep going and you're doing okay content that you will hit it. But when I started back in August last year, 7 months ago, I kind of didn't really think there would be 1,000 people like you who were interested in listening to me blather on about books that I love. The internet is a crazy thing. And the not nearly as cool thing which happened in February is I was sick for 2 weeks. And part of that time I was sick enough that I didn't feel like reading. So my reading schedule, my overbooked at the moment reading schedule was completely blown, and I may never recover. But first, I had some really, really cool collaborations in the month of February. Like I said, I hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm not going to go on about it, but the cool thing that came out of that is I ran a live stream to celebrate. And my idea was to celebrate with as many BookTube friends as I could. So I invited, I think, roughly 20 BookTube friends in a 2-hour slot to join me on screen whenever they could, stay as long or short as they wanted. And I had no idea how that would go. I thought, okay, am I okay with being the only person on that live stream? And I thought, yeah, no, it's fun also with people in the comments to celebrate. But it ended up actually much cooler than that. Exactly how I wanted it to go. A bunch of people joined me. I will read them out just to make sure I don't forget anyone. So this is a big thank you to Theo, Tori, Philip, Evie, Madison, Raf, Josh, AP Canavan, Joanna, Derry, Andrew, and Dan, all of which joined me. We actually hit the StreamYard limit, which is apparently 10 people on the same stream at the same time. But it worked out. Before we hit 10, we only had a few people, and then we had 10 for a while, and then a couple dropped out, and then a couple other joined later. So it worked out really well, and it was a lot of fun. It was chaotic, which I expected, but it was a lot of fun. Other than that, hi, Editing Matt here. February was so disrupted that I got a little confused about which collaborations I did this month. And actually, I did Friends on Books at the beginning of the month, basically a spoiler chat for Game of Thrones with Mike and Scott and Steve. And we had a great time. It was very cool talking about it. And of course, because of the read-along, there is tons of Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire in general content suddenly floating around. So it was really, really cool to talk to Steve, who is a total noob, has never read it before anyway, he's seen the series, and Scott and Mike, who are both experts, you could say, or at least huge fans. Also, as part of a buddy read with Philip Chase, I and he and a guy, PhD student named Paul, we had a live chat, or not a live chat, it wasn't live. We recorded a chat, which is on Philip's channel, links and everything to all of this stuff's down in the description, to talk about The Shadow of the Torturer, the first book in Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. And that was also an excellent chat. It's a book that it's really good to have people to talk to about because there's a lot going on. Some of it is confusing or hard to understand in your first read. This is my third read, but it's been spread out over numerous decades. So we had an excellent chat. So what did I read? Well, I've talked about it enough in past videos, but CJ Cherry, I was sort of in the middle of the fourth story or the fourth book, which is Channer's Homecoming. I finished that at the beginning of the month. I've already said a lot about it. I won't say any more. And the Realm of the Elderlings read-along continued. We're doing one book a month, and February it was Royal Assassin. It's kind of a funny thing with the Farseer trilogy, because the first book is about half as big as this, the second book, and the third book is about as big as this and the first one put together, or at least it feels that way. But this was excellent. It's the first trilogy, if you haven't read it, is the story of a bastard son of a prince who is actually the king in waiting, so the next king. And he has a rough life. There are two really interesting magic systems. I guess you would call them soft magic systems. And he has access to both of these kinds of magic. He is trained to be an assassin. It's in the title of all three books, so it's not really a spoiler. He's trained to be an assassin, but more of a strategic assassin, not a cloak and daggery, sneaking around with a dagger kind of an assassin. And Robin Hobb writes characters better than anybody I know in fantasy. So this was, the first book was kind of set up. There was a fair bit of setup there. This one, a lot happens, and it's pretty emotional, and it's a lot of tragic, horrible things. There is a villain who I want most in all of fantasy to stab in the neck. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend you read it. If you haven't, you're a little bit late to join the read-along unless you start reading quickly, because it's March and we're already on to the third book. I had a nostalgic moment. Many, many years ago, I picked up, I'm not even sure why, I think a friend recommended Italo Calvino, an Italian author who writes primarily what I would probably call metafiction. And years ago, I read If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler, and it blew my mind. It is unique. It is different than almost anything else I've ever read. I will eventually do a review of this, but as you can see, I only started it in February, and I haven't gotten any further yet, but I will be continuing. Then, as I mentioned in the collaborations, I am reading the Book of the New Sun, which is actually 4 books, with Philip Chase. Shadow, this is a bind up of the first 2, so it's Shadow of the Torturer. I read this again, third time, I think, this month, and then Philip and Paul and I had a chat about it. It's such a good book. It is confusing. There is a lot of stuff going on that you may not understand at first, but it's so masterfully written. I highly recommend it to anyone, as long as you can be relaxed about uncertainty. Then I read this chunky boy, Clash of Kings, second book in A Song of Ice and Fire. And yeah, it's a pretty chunky boy. I only finished this yesterday. Today is the 7th of March. So I finished on the 6th of March. Obviously, I am behind schedule. It's mostly a result of being sick. And this was a bit of a fight, maybe because I was just starting to feel kind of pressured. I signed up for too many things, and should have maybe been a little more cautious about my read-alongs and my buddy reads and all of that, my commitment to reading certain things. But excellent book. It felt a little bit to me like setup, and that's possibly because I've seen the series twice. I've read the books 3 times, so I know what's coming. And the big things that I kept kind of waiting for, one of them doesn't happen until towards the end of the book, and one of them doesn't happen until the next book. So it felt a little bit like moving pieces around the board, getting them in place for big things to happen. But still, an excellent book. excellent with characters, excellent with all of the intrigue and the politicking and the maneuvering that's going on around the world. Everybody knows this. I mean, let me know in the comments if you haven't read any of the books and haven't seen the series. You are a rare breed. And on and off, I read The Paper Menagerie, which is a collection of short stories by Ken Liu. I've mentioned it before. I'm about halfway through it. It's really, really good. I am enjoying this so much. And I'm surprised because the only thing I've really heard of him for is the Dandelion Dynasty, which sounds like it's mostly kind of a semi-historical fiction, semi-fantasy kind of thing. This is mostly so far, not only, but mostly so far science fiction stories, which are also extremely well told. Most of them are extremely emotional, like even in just 40 or 50 pages or less, he gets you into the characters. I've got to say, he's a masterful writer. It's really, really good. Highly recommended. I also listened to Priest of Gallows by Peter McLean. It's been on my Audible running for a while. I've been working at home a lot. I was sick for 2 weeks, and I only really listen when I go out and am running around town or commuting to work. So it's been really slow. I think I started listening to it already in January, but I finished it a few days ago, and it just keeps getting better and better. It's the third book in a 4-book series, and the series, it just keeps building up, and the stakes get crazier and crazier, and more epic things happen. And it's been really, really good. I've got the 4th book, Priest of Crowns, loaded up on my Audible already. So when I start going out on longer trips again, which considering the weather might take a little while, I will be listening to that and finishing the series. The sad thing about my February reading was it was the first month since I started the channel that I did not read Malazan anything. I felt committed because I'm hosting a read-along to read Realm of the Elderlings. I joined a read-along, Song of Ice and Fire. I have a buddy read going with Philip Chase. So I felt sort of committed to at least those 3 things. And being sick especially, something had to be taken off the list. And the next book in the Malazan series is about this thick, Reaper's Gale. And I love it. I've read it before, and I'm looking forward to reading it, but it was just too much. There was no way I could possibly finish it in February. And I'm afraid that might continue for a little while. The month has already started, and I started Assassin's Quest with it. Wait a sec. I can't talk about what I'm planning on reading in March without talking about The Way of Idan. My friend Philip Chase, after 18 years working on it, has finally published his first novel. And it comes out on March 21st. I will order it on March 21st. If Amazon's good, I'll have it on March 22nd. So that will interrupt whatever I'm doing at that time. And I will endeavor to read it in a day or two and get a review up for it. I am super looking forward to it. I love the cover design. Philip is one of the smarter people I know on BookTube and one of the nicer people I know. And he comes from a fantasy tradition similar to the fantasy tradition I come from. So I'm really excited about this book. So back to everything else. The month has already started, and I started Assassin's Quest with it a little late. I only started this morning. It's already heart-wrenching, and as you can see, I haven't read that much yet. It's it continues from the heart-wrenching end of Royal Assassin and goes straight into possibly even more heart-wrenching. I'm super looking forward to getting deeper into this. I miss Fitz. I miss Burrich. I miss everybody. And yeah, Hobbes' writing is just so. I'm into this, and I will definitely read this first and complete it this month, no matter what. This, unfortunately, is Storm of Swords. The edition I have, it's actually split into 2 books, which are pretty chunky. I'm pretty committed. Again, this means probably it's a Malazan-free month in March. I think if I finish that chunky Assassin's Quest and these 2 chunky books, that will be more than enough for me this month. So that's probably it. But I will also be reading the second of these books, Book of the New Sun, Claw of the Conciliator, because I'm committed to a buddy read with Philip Chase, and these are awesome. So I'll definitely be reading that as well. I would prioritize this and Assassin's Quest over Storm of Swords. So first Assassin's Quest, then this. These are for sure. Storm of Swords if I can. And this is way too optimistic. It's not going to happen, but I think it was the second book I ever reviewed on the channel, and the first and only author interview I ever did was with Gareth Hanrahan, who wrote The Black Iron Legacy. The first book is The Gutter Prayer. You can go back and look at the reviews and the interview. Gareth is a super nice guy, and we kept in touch a little bit, and I asked him to send me his new book. He has started a new series called what's the series name? Called The Lands of the Firstborn. The first book is The Sword Defiant, and he sent me an ARC. That's why it has this little red sticker-looking thing there. Not for resale. This looks to be something very, very different. It looks to be much more of a classic fantasy kind of a read. Looking at the dramatis personae, the list of characters in the front, it actually sounds a bit like a D&D adventuring party. I haven't read anything, just a very, very broad first impression. I really want to read this, and I don't want to leave it too long because it officially comes out, I think, in May. I think he said May 12th. So I'd like to get a review up before it goes out, but we'll see how I go. That is February. Like I said, a very mixed month. I am a little heartbroken that I have had a month and will probably have another month where I'm not reading anything Malazan. That was kind of the backbone of my whole channel idea when I started. And I was really irritated to be sick. I will spare you the details. It was not pleasant. I'm feeling much better now. Thank you, everyone who left me a well wishes message. But yeah, this month, it's like all of my commitments are coming home to roost, and I'm having to prioritize them. I already dropped out of the Shogun read-along in January already. I'm not going to drop out of A Song of Ice and Fire, but the priority is Realm of the Odalings, Book of the New Sun, and then Song of Ice and Fire. So this month I will not finish those. I'm pretty certain I will not, but I will do my best and try not to stress myself. I was hitting a bit of a stress point in February where, because of being sick, I felt so behind. Reading started feeling like not a chore, but something that I should do and that I was behind on doing rather than just something I could enjoy. And I said, no, fuck that. And relaxed a little bit and read some Ken Liu short stories and chilled the fuck out again. And I plan on doing that this month as well. There are certain things I definitely want to finish, and then other things maybe just won't quite get there. As always, I hope you are well. Keep reading awesome books. Don't overcommit to read awesome books like I did. And I'll see you next time.